ChooseFI, Episode 6, The Power of Partnerships.
You're listening to ChooseFI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. ChooseFI, your home for financial independence online.
So today in the studio, I'm sitting down with Brad, and we are discussing the power of partnerships. Now, this is an episode that is the story of kind of how we met and decided to go down this route, but it's also just a great topic to discuss because it is a process that you should consider when starting a new business. Welcome, Brad.
Hey, Jonathan. How's it going?
Good, man. Well, thanks for joining me again today.
Yeah, always excited to be here. Yeah, and just wanted to say just real quick from the outset, partnerships are not perfect for everyone. They're not perfect in all situations. So just the silly little caveat at the beginning, we think that partnerships can be very powerful. And we're going to explain to you why we think it's benefited us both now with this podcast, with this site, and for us in the past. But we just want to share what we're doing and what we think about it.
So I would say probably 8 months ago, I was listening to a podcast, and I was listening to the Mad Fientist podcast, who interviews influencers in the financial independent space. And he interviewed Brad and Alexi, who had a site, Travel Miles 101. And he was really interviewing about what travel hacking is and how they got where they did. And that was my first introduction to Brad. And I found out through that episode that he was in Richmond. And I am very interested in this space, although I had not yet started to build any sort of business myself. And when I heard that Brad was in Richmond, I reached out to him really just to have a conversation and talk a little bit more about travel hacking. And Brad agreed to meet me, and we met up for lunch, and we just got to hash out all these different ideas, and it was awesome.
Yeah, we had a great conversation over delicious burgers, and I am someone who always wants to take these lunches or take a phone call with someone, and that doesn't mean if you email me and say, hey, let's hop on the phone, I'm going to do it with everyone. Obviously, my time is finite, and I do guard it because I have a family and such, but Jonathan seemed like a really super cool guy. He lived right here in Richmond, VA with me, and I was thrilled to, sit down with someone who's in this quote unquote space, which is, for me, it's this just being aware of personal finance, financial independence. Travel hacking was how he was introduced to me, I suppose. So we had a lot to talk about. And, frankly, like in real life, there aren't that many people that you can talk to about this, right?
No, there's not. And if you try to force it on someone that's not ready for it, you will start to get weird looks, and you'll notice that you'll stop getting Christmas cards in the mail.
Yeah, people think you're crazy rather quickly, unfortunately.
Don't tell someone you don't know that the thing that they can do to improve their life is open up 8 new credit cards, and they haven't been introduced to the topic. They will walk away from you quickly.
Yes.
So yeah, absolutely. But Brad and I do have a lot in common, although we didn't know it at the time. And Brad is not only, this guru. I hate saying the word guru. He's not a guru, but he is a really good in this space. But he loves financial independence. And he had the site Richmond Savers. He had a bunch of really cool ideas on there. And so I really kind of found out more about him through that story. And so I had this idea that we could build this platform, this kind of launching pad for all these great ideas, that we could turn them into this story that builds and takes you from where you are to where you want to be. And it makes sense for you depending on what your particular situation is. And we just talked about it, and he got excited about it, and I got excited about it. And I realized basically right after I finished talking to him that while I could completely do this on my own, I am a tech guy. I can figure out tech. I can do a podcast. I'm comfortable learning new skills. He had so much to offer that I was not capable of doing. He had already built himself as an authority. He is a respected figure in this area. And he just had a level of insight that you can't get unless you've done something. You need to learn through your mistakes, if you will. You need to spend some time, trial by fire, that type of thing. And while I could get there over the next 2 to 3 years, he had already gone through it and come out the other side. And he was ready for that next project. And, I just asked him, I said, this is something I'm doing. I can tell that he was excited about the idea. Would you like to join me with this? And I'm very grateful that he said yes.
Yeah. And it really was an easy decision after I got to know Jonathan. Obviously, I'm pretty busy, and I don't mean that in a positive way. People are very proud of being busy. That's not my thing. I have two websites that do quite well. And, if I invested more time in them, they could continue to grow and succeed. So, I don't jump into things lightly. I mean, this was not something that I just, Jonathan, we met for burgers and we decided, let's have a partnership for the next 10 years. That would be silly and short-sighted.
And it would be short-sighted of me to say that we actually decided to team up at that juncture. So we had lunch, we enjoyed our conversation. I shared some of my ideas with him and got his input on a few of the things that I had been reading on his website. And that was it. We kind of parted our ways. And then, I had told him that I was planning on starting something. And sure enough, 2 or 3 months later, he messages me and say, "Hey, have you started it yet?" And I had not. I was rolling out of bed just to go back to work to my 9 to 5. And I had this awesome conversation. It had been fantastic. And I had done nothing with it from that. I may have typed up a few ideas, but that was it. And he just said, "Hey, you were real excited about this. What did you end up doing about it?"
Yeah. No, sorry to talk over you. I think that was the little kick in the butt that you needed to actually take action.
That was it. I don't know if I needed permission or I needed just an idea that someone else had thought that idea would carry some weight or was interesting or would be interesting to someone else other than myself. Because all of us, when we go onto the internet and we try to find new resources, we try to answer questions, we look for those answers. And while I was getting fragments in different places, I wasn't getting exactly what I wanted to find. And you don't necessarily feel if it's okay for you just to build it from scratch. And Brad, just by asking me if I had done anything about it, I felt like I now had permission, which is, maybe that sounds a little bit naive, but yeah, I said, "Brad, I haven't, but I'm going to." And I launched the domain name that day. I came up with the branding for the website that exact day, or the day within a week. And I launched the website 2 weeks later. And then maybe 3 weeks later, I said, "Brad, let's sit down and have lunch again or talk about this again." I took him kind of my idea, my blueprint for where I thought this was going to go and what I wanted to create and how I was going to get there. And at the end of it, I said, "Brad, do you want to join me with this?" And he jumped on board.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we had at that point, I guess, probably 3 meetings, and I had no idea at all that I was going to be involved in this.
He did not. I ambushed him.
Yeah. I mean, Jonathan was just a cool guy that I enjoyed, speaking with and chatting with. And I was super excited for him that he had these plans and he was actually taking action on it. I'm not one of these calculating people who's sitting there thinking, "Oh, what's in it for me?" It's just, this is someone who I've grown to like, and I want to help him if I can. I've found again and again that personal relationships just matter. I'm 99% sure I've mentioned this on multiple podcasts previously. Personal relationships are everything. And that doesn't mean, again, that you're doing it in a calculated way that, if I befriend Jonathan and help him out, that somewhere down the road, it's going to help me. It's nothing like that. It's just, you just never know. You never know where life is going to take you. And you just never know when, you open yourself to new situations, when serendipity is going to hit, right? And something good is going to come of it. You just simply do not know. But the more of these experiences you open yourself to, the more opportunities you give yourself. And that's huge.
So now Brad and I, 3 months, 4 months later, have created something that has the potential to be this platform. We've gone from nothing and we've created this idea. And there's nothing more powerful than idea. This place that people can meet from different walks of life, but they have this one thing in common, this financial independence. And we can all get better together. I can get better from Brad. He's going to learn stuff from me, and we're going to learn stuff from you, our audience. And I'm amazed at how quickly this all came together. It came together so quickly. And I have to look and say, all right, was there anything there that it was just us? It was only something that we could have done? Or is there any actionable tips that we could put back out there into the community to say, hey, these might be useful to you. You might want to take a look, because I think this is what allowed us to get here this quickly. And I think there is. So here's what I've come up with as I've looked at this. One, if you're going to find a partner, don't find someone that's completely at the finish line. Find someone that is 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. So in Brad's case, I think he had developed himself as a genuine authority in travel miles and travel hacking. People do respect him in that space. He knows what he's talking about. But I could tell he also had an interest in financial independence. I've never seen him not wear a t-shirt that's branded with some type of financial independence label. I mean, that is the space that he lives in. In fact, his other site, Richmond Savers, is dedicated to that. Now, that is not a national platform. Seems to attract more people from our local geographic region. But I could tell that there was real potential there and that he was ready for that next level spotlight. He had been on multiple podcasts. He has a great speaking voice. He has an engaging personality. People connect to him, frankly, at a level that I can appreciate, but I'm not as good at it. And that is powerful. I enjoyed listening to him, and I would like to hear him talk more about things that are relevant to me. So I guess what I'm trying to say is when you're finding someone when you're thinking about someone as a potential partner, I think that there's something there. You can't go to that person that has it completely all figured out. They've got a complete business model that's running beginning to end because they don't need you or have time for you. There was room in Brad's life for someone to help introduce a new project and take it to the next level. He wasn't at the finish line yet. He was really close. He was really close, but he wasn't completely at the finish line yet. And so I had to bring something to the table. And so I brought an idea and I brought sweat equity. I built something from the ground up. And then I was able to merge that with his site authority. I mean, he has an incredible amount of authority on the web now in this certain space. And we can leverage that into creating this new platform. And it will jumpstart a website that frankly should have no business being ranked into something that's going to be seen all across the internet very, very quickly.
Yeah. And I think just to kind of touch on that is this was something that I was excited about, right? I mean, it was something that I have a true passion for. And Jonathan saw that, right? He saw that because we sat down for coffee and lunch a couple times and we just talked about it. And it was outside of this travel reward space, which, I love, obviously, but I've been living, eating and breathing that for the last 3 years. And I wanted to get back into the personal finance, the financial independence space. And what attracted Jonathan to me was that he is unbelievably passionate. And I know I said this, I think, on our very first podcast, but I've never seen someone dive into a project like he has with this. We have these conversations where you would think we're like Dr. Evil from Austin Powers, where we have these, world dominating plans. And we mean it in the most positive way possible. We think that we wouldn't be wasting our time on this if we didn't think it could help hundreds of thousands or millions of people. We legitimately think that. And that's not because we want to make millions off this or we want to be famous. We don't care about that stuff. We're on a path for financial independence, just in our own lives. But we think that there's a niche here, that there's a space that hasn't been filled that we can fill. And I think that personal relationship, that personal connection is what matters. That's what I relate to when I listen to podcasts, when I read articles. It's not about the math all the time. It's not about just you need to do X, Y, and Z. It's about listening to people and understanding their story and finding out what they've done well, where they've failed, because we've failed plenty. You'll hear many of the things that I've screwed up on. I am far from perfect, but I just try to make little steps every day to just get a little bit better. And I think that is powerful. And I think that'll help. And just going back to Jonathan real quick, is he has this incredible passion. He has incredible technical skills on this site. He talks about maybe us fast forwarding a couple of years because of, maybe things that I've learned and connections that I have. And there's some validity to that, but just the amount of work that he's put into the site and the podcast puts us multiple years ahead on that side of things. So you take those two together and that is a very powerful partnership, right? I mean, complementary skills that really catapult us multiple years ahead of where we should be as a new website. And that's huge because who knows where websites and podcasts will be 3 years from now. If we're hitting the ground running now, we don't have to put in all that time and effort to beat the learning curve. We've already beaten it.
What I love about websites and building something like we're building, it always amazes me in this space. Once you've built something, it's just there. It amazes me when I go back and I read articles that I've written. It's still there. It's not like a conversation that you had where you said something really smart and it disappeared into the wind. When you build something, it's an asset. It's something that you can go back and see, which is maybe a sidebar, but it's kind of cool. Now, but the one takeaway that I wanted to point out to y'all, because maybe you could say, well, that was just blind luck that you ran into Brad, but you don't necessarily have to have blind luck to find a good partner for something. What you need is to find somebody that shares similar interest. And if you can see whether or not there's some sort of compatible relationship there. And in order to do that, you really need to position yourself. And so, I'm going to give away to Brad on this one because he has a lot more experience with partnerships, but that is probably going to be the actionable tip for you. Let's say that you are interested in starting a business of any sort in any niche. What are the actionable tips? What are the ways, if you decide that you want to try to do this with a partner, how would you go about that? And Brad's had a few partners in the past, so maybe he can help us with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step that I would do personally is get involved in the community. In all likelihood, there's some online community in whatever niche you're involved in. There might be a forum, there might be a popular website or multiple websites where you can comment on articles, and you can maybe reach out to the website owner, blogger, whatever you want to call it, and just shoot him or her an email. Just establish a relationship. I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's all about those genuine personal connections and relationships. So, clearly to me, that's step number one, because you just never know who in the course of life you're going to meet, who you might just strike up a friendship with. It's just like any aspect of life. There are thousands of personal finance bloggers, and you find your little niche just by sometimes sheer luck. Like I become friends with, Brandon from Mad Fientist and Jim from J.L. Collins and Carl and Mindy from 1500 Days. And, I'm not a name dropper.
Oh, you are name dropping.
No,
right now.
God. I mean, it's just since I don't want to leave anybody out, Liz from Frugalwood. So,
there you go, Liz. You got a shout out.
Yep. Thanks. That's my group of friends. So, we go to FinCon every year, and I'm not one of these people who is, schmoozing and meeting new people, to my detriment, probably. It's, I wish I had that as a life skill, but I go and I hang out with my friends. And it's as if we're live next to each other for our whole lives. We're just fast friends like that, even though we see each other once or twice a year. And it's finding that group that you connect with. So I think there are a couple of learning lessons from that, which is meeting people in person. And this goes back to the partnership that Jonathan and I have. Meeting people in person is really important. It will never, even in this online world, the value of that will never go away. You can't get what you need to get from a relationship in many cases, without meeting someone. Or at least talking to them on the phone, or just some relationship other than just a comment here or there on a blog.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the second half of that is got to be evaluate what you are capable of bringing to the picture. You can't go in and just ask. You've got to evaluate what you can actually bring. And so, with Brad, I knew what I could bring. I'm not a tech guy in that I've never taken a coding class. I don't know HTML, but what I am is I'm a guy that can figure out what I don't know and how to answer that question. So I knew I was capable of that once I applied my mind to it, and I had an idea, and you've got to be able to present something. So, what is one? First, it is to network. It is to start participating on someone's blog or Facebook feed, or, provide some sort of value to that situation. Go to conferences, FinCon, if that's your niche, or, whatever niche applies to your specific situation, and then reach out and make actual contact. And then once you've done those three things, you're then positioned, if you would like to then form a partnership with somebody, you've positioned yourself for that. And it just opens up more doors for you, even if that doesn't happen. Let's say you just want to know more about a specific niche because you're interested in it. That's the worst case scenario. You're going to find out a lot more than you were expecting. But best case scenario, if you actually want to start something, you will position yourself for that. And if you decide to do that, then you need to think about, all right, what can I just bring to the picture? Because you can't just ask someone to take on more work. If they've built something that's working for them on the internet, there's a significant time investment they've already made, and probably one they still have. You need to think about that, be considerate of that, and then figure out how you can add to that picture.
Yeah, and obviously in any partnership, you need to split up the duties, right? If I was just coming in here and Jonathan's doing all the work and I just swoop in and talk on a podcast every so often, I would A, feel guilty, and B, that wouldn't be a very effective partnership. It's providing value where you can. That doesn't mean, in every partnership, and I know this from past experience, things are not going to be 50-50 in time. They're just simply not. And if you go in with that expectation, in all likelihood, you're going to be disappointed. Whichever side you come up on that, you might either feel guilty or be disappointed that you're spending more time, unless you're realistic and say, look, it's never going to be the exact amount of time. That's almost inconceivable, but it's bringing value, and it's also bringing a different perspective. And I think this is where I've succeeded with my partnership with Alexi on Travel Miles 101, and also here with Jonathan on ChooseFI, which is we are in both of these instances. And I think this is where people connect. And where people, these platforms, they resonate with people, because we're not sitting there saying we're these untouchable gods who are podcasting and calling down from on high. We're just regular guys who are living regular middle-class lives, but we think we figured out some tips that can help you. And that's powerful, because we're not doing anything special here. I don't think that I'm doing anything great that can't be replicated by any single one of you. Every single person listening to this can do what I do, because honestly, I am nothing special. And that is really, really important to remember, okay? So what's cool in both of these particular partnerships, like I said, is not only do people connect to us personally, but we have slightly different perspectives. And I think people listening and saying, wow, this is not somebody dictating to me what you need to do. This is, in our case, two guys who are fairly similar on the face of it, but come at life differently. And we're literally sitting here on many of these podcasts just talking about different ways that we do it, and we feed off of each other, right? And we learn new things every single time. And I suspect I'm going to take a lot from what Jonathan does and vice versa. And that is super powerful. Not all partnerships are going to be perfect, right? There are going to be situations where they just don't work. And having an understanding from the outset is really important, I've found. Because, I've gotten into some partnerships with friends of mine or colleagues who had a great relationship with, and we didn't sit down at the beginning and just kind of hash out what we thought was going to happen or what the delineation of duties would be. And it eventually got to a scenario where things weren't succeeding, and we kind of got, it's just a little frustrating ultimately because we weren't on the same page. And again, this goes back to what we were just talking about, which is it's not going to be even. It's not going to be 50-50. It's inconceivable. But at least if you have some understanding of the value you bring and the value that each of you bring, then you can feel good about that moving forward. So I've had successful partnerships in the past and currently where I'm doing way more than 50% of the work, but I still think that's a good partnership because it wouldn't work without that other partner because he or she brings so much value and brings a different perspective. And that is huge. But if we didn't have some understanding of where we were coming from, it probably would have fallen apart because people get just annoyed that, oh, I'm doing 90% of the work and I'm getting 50% of the money. That can be frustrating, right? But you need to be realistic. So what I've found from personal experience is that is essential just to have some understanding. So I'm sure there are many, many other experts who would sit here and say you need to hash out and have lawyers and come up with a perfect operating agreement. And I don't think that's necessary in most cases, honestly. I think people of good faith can sit down and just say, hey, look, we have plans for this. We think it's going to be successful. Here's what's going to happen. And obviously, if you want to cover your butt, you can hash out these legal details. But in most cases, it's not going to be necessary. But just be realistic. That's how I want to sum this up most succinctly.
No, it's really good. And I don't want to finish on all the cons, with the pros on the other half of that, the iterative process and just sharpening the steel and finding out exactly what is your goal. That is extremely powerful. Not only that, but you may find that with that accountability of having somebody else, it may amplify your results. You'll be there faster than you would be otherwise. And I think it's more fun. Digging around in the weeds by yourself can be a lonely process. So it adds a level of enthusiasm to it.
You're listening to ChooseFI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. ChooseFI, your home for financial independence online.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the ChooseFI Radio Podcast. Join us next week as we take a look at America's food obsession and what you can do about it.